Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Nexio webinar on sustainability goal setting. And this is a special one because indeed it's not just a webinar, but we're really going to make this a little bit into a workshop with everyone present. I'm seeing the count going up, so we're just going to give it a little bit of time for everyone to join. I think maybe in the meantime, we can have a little introduction on myself and Pamela, who will be your hosts of today. My name is Thomas van der Molen. I'm a senior consultant here with Nexio Projects. Have been for almost 2 years now, working mostly with the Dutch market because, the rapid developments that I would say are taking place in the Dutch market with regards to sustainability, as they are, I think, worldwide. And here today with my colleague Pamela, with whom together we've been working a lot on the goal setting services that we provide to our clients. So really looking forward to hosting this webinar with you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Pamela Lam, ESG consultant at Nexio Projects, also for about a year, about 2 years now. Time goes fast, and I think by coincidence we're having an orange presentation, but that's because this is the orange Dutch team, also Dutch, and very excited to be hosting this goal setting workshop with you, and very excited to present the goal setting workshop templates with you.
Thank you, Pam. Maybe a short introduction. I think most of you will know Nexio Projects, but obviously we are a sustainability consultancy located in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And we really work with a variety of different services. So we like to say that we're the one-stop shop for sustainability. We have a lot of experience, mostly with the EcoVadis certification. That's really where the company started, but nowadays working with a lot of different certifications, including B Corp, also UNGC, and several ISO standards. Obviously, we support our clients also on the reporting side, which also due to legislation is becoming more and more important, as you might have seen in some of our series, also upcoming again on all the developments regarding the CSRD in Europe. Then besides the ESG team, we have a climate team as well that really supports our clients with the more technical side of things, doing carbon footprint assessments, life cycle analyses, but also really ensuring that the goals you set there are, for example, aligned with SBTi. So really the more technical side of things. And what we've really grown into over the last couple of years is really the more strategic advisory side of sustainability, ensuring that the strategy that you set for your sustainability agenda is aligned with all the relevant standards, but also really aligned with obviously your business activities, what's important in your industry, and how you can really make the most of the sustainability efforts that you put in to also position yourself as a sustainable player in your industry. That really, I would say, is very much linked to the topic of today. So we're going to be talking about goal setting, obviously a very important topic, also from the CSRD requirement that's coming up. They're looking not only backwards at what have you done, but also really looking forwards at what do you want to achieve. So that's really where for us the call came forward to host a workshop specifically on the goal setting process to guide you a little bit through how you can approach that within your company, and give you some tangible exercises to work with. So the agenda of today is we're first going to have a small introduction of what are goals really, and how can you look at that from a so-called SMART perspective. We're going to be discussing why should you really set goals, specifically for your sustainability agenda. We're going to look at the goal setting process, and then we're going to dive together into the Miro template that we have prepared for you, to play around a little bit with the different exercises, and finally have some space to answer some of the questions that you may have. With this, I'm passing it over to Pamela.
Thank you, Thomas. So let's, without further ado, provide a bit of an introduction around the goals, a first look, but also let's just take a moment in memory of all those New Year's resolutions that we didn't meet or didn't get to achieve, because maybe our action planning wasn't strong enough towards really making it a realistic goal, but also maybe that stands still with all the actions that were done in very good intention, but the impact of it was not very easily measured because there wasn't a very clear vision as to the results that you were trying to reach. So I think the Japanese saying, vision without action is a daydream, action without vision is nightmare. It resonates very well with me personally, at least. But also definitely when it comes down to setting sustainability goals and your sustainability strategy, very important, of course, to make sure that those sustainability goals are aligned with your team's vision and also realistic enough to set those actions towards meeting them. So sustainability goals are future looking, either quantitative or qualitative, measurable action aims or objectives that organizations set across various pillars of sustainability. And when we talk about various pillars of sustainability, we generally, and which you will also see in the Miro board, we generally take the pillars environment, labor and human rights, ethics and sustainable procurement, but other known pillars are of course also environmental, social and governance. So that is really what we are going to be talking about today. And to maybe further concretize the sustainability goals definition, we are specifically going to look into SMART goals. So those goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, really a framework that is with the purpose to guide so the goal setting, to focus your efforts and increase the chances of you achieving those goals. That is really the framework that we are going to use in drafting your goals, but also in testing whether the goals are focused enough. I think we would like to do a little bit of a poll here. So I give the word to Thomas to start that.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. We are very curious whether you have already set any sustainability goals. And I'm going to be launching a poll that should pop up for all of you with 4 options, 4 different answers that you can select. One, yes, we have set SMART sustainability goals. So really those measurable goals, as Pamela just explained. Yes, but we did not base them really on the SMART framework, or they're a little bit less tangible and measurable. Option 3, no, we haven't set sustainability goals yet. And 4, I don't know. Pamela, what do you think that the results will be? Do you have a good guess of where companies generally are in this process?
I think a lot of organizations are already very far and have a lot of intentions, right, to think about sustainability, and probably also the people that are joining in today. So I think there must be organizations that already have very nice actions in place. But I think maybe yes, but not based on the SMART framework. I think that's also something that we see with our clients, that sometimes it can be a bit challenging to really set those challenging and ambitious goals. And that is something that I could imagine is maybe the majority answer here. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have the answers here in front of me, so I would be cheating.
You are all knowing.
But I'm going to close the poll. So last few people are voting. Let's count back from 10 in our heads, and then the poll is going to close. What we're seeing, and I think that's really nice to see, that only 1% of the participants doesn't know. So at least everyone knows whether or not their company has already set any sustainability goals. And you should be seeing right now the results of the poll. So I think what Pamela said is very much aligned also with my own experience. Goals are being set on sustainability in most cases. Some companies just haven't done so yet, also almost 30% here. But then the larger percentage here, 25 plus 45, have already set some form of sustainability goals. Actually, 25% has already set SMART goals. So I think that's really great to notice. But in a lot of cases, yeah, making them measurable, tangible, that really is the challenge still. We like to set sort of overarching goals, like we want to reduce energy consumption, and all that is really good. But nowadays, I think we're really moving to that next level of, okay, what's the baseline and what's the improvement that we want to create? So with that, I'm handing it back to you, Pamela, to go into why we should set goals.
Yes, why? Well, we already talked about those New Year's resolutions, but also for our organization, of course, we want to really inspire our team and also reassure them that with a focused goal, we can actually make it work together as a team. So these sustainability goals really ensure you to be able to engage with those internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, to involve those diverse stakeholders' voices and their views within your sustainability strategy, to strategize. So make those sustainability, make it really part of the medium to long-term strategic agenda of your company. Focus, determine what the most important topics are for your organization's sustainability. So not that all your resources and capacity is allocated to maybe a topic that you have less impact of than something that you do have a lot of impact in, and really to be able to set the course towards implementing actions, identifying a high-level practical and actionable roadmap towards sustainability. It also allows you to measure your impact. So identify the right KPIs aligned with your goals and metrics to really measure and report upon, to also report back to your stakeholders that we mentioned before. And also, when you measure, you review, you go back, are we actually on track with our goals, or do we need to implement more actions perhaps? So really having that structured approach towards improving, strengthening brand reputation, investor confidence, and regulatory resilience, and the bottom line. So that's a bit about the why to set sustainability goals in the first place. And if we talk about setting sustainability goals, where does this fit within the grand scheme of your sustainability management system? With the sustainability management system, we've covered this within the scheme. First, you really look at what are those material topics, those most important topics for your financial variability of your company, as well as what you as a company can impact on. Then develop and review sustainability strategy. So we would say that the goal setting really fits within this phase of the sustainability management system. Based on those material topics that you identified, you set those goals. Then after you have set those goals, you adopt and review an action plan towards meeting those goals, and you collect data and monitor performance year on year, reflect and report on the progress towards those goals. And with that, I will pass the ball back to Thomas.
Thank you, Pamela. So let's have a look at the process of goal setting, right? Because it's not as straightforward as one might think. If we go to the next slide, then we have a nice visual here for you. It all starts with the intention to really structure your sustainability management system, which is all about, as Pamela just explained, setting that strategy, managing that strategy, reviewing it, coming back to it, reporting on it. So yeah, really making sure that the topic is properly managed in your organization. And part of that is really the goal setting process. We have another point there on completing materiality assessment. So for CSRD, also for GRI aligned reporting, proper assessment of what are the most important topics for your company to report on is mandatory. Then if you're coming more from an EcoVadis certification point of view, then we could say that the activated criteria that EcoVadis presents are a similar materiality that is behind there on an industry level, which informs for them which criteria need to be questioned in an EcoVadis assessment. So you can go at that from both angles. The first step in that, what we always recommend, is really beyond sort of the vision of we want to become more sustainable, obviously describing that in aligned with the overall company vision. But then it's important for each pillar, as Pamela mentioned, environment, labor and human rights, ethics, and procurement. That's really generally the 4 pillars that we work with. Sometimes a different sort of high-level team allocation works better for a company, but that's perfectly fine as well. And then on that level, as step 1, define an overarching principle and really define sort of the overall direction that you want to go at with regards to that topic. And that's important because below it, all the other goals will fall. And we'll give some examples of this in the Miro board. We're still getting used to saying Miro instead of Miro, but yes, trust us, it is the case. A colleague has adequately convinced us. After that, after setting sort of the overall direction for your pillars, you have the topics that fall within each of those pillars, right? So we want to set, again, a high-level objective, which can be qualitative, something like reduce energy consumption, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That sort of breaks down the overarching principle into topic-relevant definitions and objectives that you say these are going to be guiding our direction. Then the third step, and this is really an important one that we'll look into in the Miro board as well, is drafting the SMART goals. So not yet actually setting them, but drafting them. It's important to see the difference between this in step 3 and then step 6, which is about completing those SMART goals, because between those two, we need to do some investigation, right? We need to internally define what relevant KPIs and also metrics we need to start measuring. So in order to define first a SMART goal, saying we need to reduce energy consumption by 50% by 2030. Then what is that 50% going to refer to is a certain baseline. That's either this year or last year, or in some cases 2018, that's used as a sort of a standard point of reference. So in order to measure that, you need to measure energy consumption across all your different locations. You need to also know maybe what percentage comes from renewable sources already. There's a whole bunch of things that you want to go and measure, keep track of. So you need to first define that, then go through a round of measuring them in step 5, before you have the information that you need in order to complete the goals in step 6. We'll really dive into this a little bit more in the Miro board, but we wanted to give you that overview, right? Once you then have those goals, and in a lot of cases, what we're seeing is that those goals are set either until 2030, because it's also the UN Global Agenda on Sustainable Development has set those goals until 2030. There's some things around SBTI that has an intermediate target for 2030, leading to the final goal in 2050. But 2030 is an important year. Sometimes we see that it just aligns with a 5-year strategy development of the company going till 2026 or 27, whatever really works for you. But you have that sort of final goal for your current strategy development. And then step 7 is about breaking those down into targets that you want to achieve year on year. So really, stipulating that roadmap for yourself of if we want to achieve a certain reduction or a certain improvement by a certain end date, then how are we going to get there? Because otherwise what we often see is that companies postpone a lot of action until maybe 2-3 years before that deadline, and then suddenly a lot of things need to happen in a short period of time in order to still achieve the goal. Finally, step 8 is really all about monitoring those KPIs and reporting, and we have quite a lot of other webinars from the past, but also upcoming, again, specifically focusing on that reporting part. With that, I think it's time to Miro.
Let's do it.
I said it wrong, to Miro.
No, I also have a hard time remembering it's Miro. Let me just share my screen. So if correct, you actually have the link to the template for the Miroverse. Let me see here. Do you see my screen? Just checking.
Yes, I do, at least on my side.
Perfect. So this is how it looks like from higher level. So really what we would advise you to the way that you can use this this Miro board is to have it facilitate the conversations with your stakeholders, right? To set those sustainability goals. So one thing that we want to mention here is that we actually got some initial feedback and we've incorporated the feedback a little bit, so made a few adjustments of which we will be showing the final version during this webinar today. But after the webinar, you will be able to also download that template on the Miro first and yeah, work with it yourself. So what is on this board? We have a section on just a reflection. Where do you stand? And where do you want to go? A section around materiality assessments, just an example of how you can go about a materiality assessment workshop. And then we have some slides around smart goal setting and the prompts that we would like to give with regards to setting those smart goals. KPI selection, measure baseline, complete SMART goals and set targets, and monitor and report. So really those 8 steps that Thomas was showing just now. And if we jump into the first chapter around where do we currently stand? So this is really a moment to really reflect together with your stakeholders around where do we actually stand as a organization, as opposed to the market trends within the context that we operate. Is that maybe in the level 1 where we are lagging as opposed to those other players in the fields? With that, some prompts there that you could use to see if that's aligning with your current status. Is that because you have an inactive strategy? There's not really actually a strategy at all for sustainability, and perhaps there's even a lack of motivation there. Of course, that's being the majority sentiment of lacking motivation. Then when we go to level 2, we speak of compliance. So compliance status, there's a strategy, but it's a bit more reactive. So you see some things happening in the fields. How do we react to that with our strategy? Your compliance with regulations, so that's of course very important. And there is some extrinsic motivation to move ahead. Within the level 3 smart follower, we have the active strategy. So not only looking at what are the risks that we encounter in the field, but also actively thinking of how can we positively impact the context that we are operating in. There's a resource commitment and an intrinsic motivation as well to move with your sustainability strategy. Is that a leader position potentially in level 4? That's really a proactive strategy, really looking into taking the extra mile apart from also the legal realm. It's this transformational approach. External collaborations and industry innovation is the motivation there. And if we look at the beyond level 5, there's a very, very active strategy, maybe even lobbying for more standards, really being the proactive player in the field that also sets the standard. Company acts with the purpose and passion and aims for an extra positive impact to create as part of your business model. So what we see here is that you can use this board such that you can enter the name, your name, the participant name to a color. You lock that basically, and you can play with these colored schemes. Normally you can play with these. At this moment, they're stuck for a moment. But normally you can place them Thank you. Someone is helping me here.
I think maybe since you're sharing that something is not working there, but yes, I can move them. So let's say person number 5 thinks that the company is incompliant, and number 7 here towards the end of a smart follower and leader, right?
Exactly. Thank you for the assistance, Thomas, indeed. So you can indeed play around here a little bit with where you feel that you are currently at, and have that discussion together with your stakeholders, right? So that you can sort of calibrate where your current status is. Then the same exercise you can do by having the conversation with those stakeholders around your ambitions towards the future. That can be in a timeline of 5 to 10 years, perhaps. Where do you want to stand? Do you want to grow towards a smart follower, leader, or even beyond status? Then that's great. What does it then entail to become a leader or beyond player in that field? I think that's at least for what I've seen from the workshops that we have done, it really gives room for some very interesting discussions, and also already lots of creativity ensuing from such discussions. So yeah, that's how you can use these 2 boards as a first scoping. And I give the words to Thomas for the materiality assessments slides.
Thank you, Pamela, and thank you for walking us through indeed the ambition setting workshop there. And once you have a bit of an idea on that overall level of ambition, we're going to focus now on selecting those material topics as we define it, right? We put a couple of them already as examples into the Miro template, but it's really up to you to use these post-its, right? And add anything that might be relevant for your company specifically, right? Because there's a lot of other topics that we can think of when it comes to environmental sustainability, and some of them might be more or less applicable to your company. Now, there's obviously the full materiality assessment that you can do. There's the EcoVadis activated criteria that you can follow, but there's also some open databases like SASB, where you can really have a bit more of an industry view of what are relevant topics for you to report on, to consider, and therefore to set goals on. Pamela, I know that you just did a workshop this morning exactly like this. What were maybe a couple of other topics that came up for labor and human rights and ethics?
So I think for labor and human rights, indeed, these topics are very, very prevalent at the moment. So JEDI, by the way, is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We thought it was a very nice acronym for this specific topic. Labor and human rights, for example, social dialogue is something that we see coming up quite often. Really having that discussion with the regular discussion with your employees on various things that impact them. With ethics, anti-competitive practices, for example. We also often place data security within this topic of ethics. And for sustainable procurement, well, if you're talking about chemicals, for example, then responsible sourcing of renewable materials, for example, is something that you see here quite a lot, or maybe even diving deeper into topics such as transportation and the impact of that with your transport suppliers.
Yeah, so definitely we can really see it's a broad amount of topics, and I'm seeing here also the question coming in the chat whether we consider EcoVadis a maturity assessment, and just to point out the difference between maturity that we just looked at in the previous exercise with Pamela, and then materiality, which is really those most material topics, where EcoVadis is not an actual materiality assessment. It does inform which topics are seen for your industry as more important, more material, in the form of activated criteria. So that's just good to see the difference, and also see how EcoVadis indeed informs that. And for a lot of companies that are starting their journey through EcoVadis, obviously a large part of our clients do, it's important for your policy development and also reporting to make sure that that's aligned with those activated criteria. And then if you move towards CSRD coming up, if applicable for your company, or if you want to report along GRI guidelines, then doing a stakeholder survey based materiality assessment, really expanding that view among basically asking a lot of other stakeholders outside of your company, your suppliers, your customers, but also throughout the supply chain, preferably even reaching communities or NGOs that have a certain voice, and including that into determining which topics are the most important for you to focus on. So just as a segue, and I'm seeing that also my colleague Anya has posted a link to the separate materiality download that we have developed, and we have also a previous webinar on that if you want to dive a little bit deeper into the topic. Let's move to one slide on the right, where there's a little exercise for indicating the sort of the relevance, the importance of each of those topics for your company, just to lead into being able to prioritize one above the other, because obviously there's always a lot of things that are important. It's also important to make sure that you don't go too much in detail, but really keep these topics a little bit more high level and then put them in here. This is a really nice sliding scale that we can use to indicate, hey, if we're using very little water in the activities, and it's really all about maybe some washing hands and flushing toilets in an office building, then generally that's not one of the more relevant topics. But if you're located close to some natural reserves or areas that need environmental protection, then biodiversity could be a really important topic. And that way it's then important to sort of take the time for each of those topics to talk about it, to indicate, okay, how relevant is this really for us, before moving to what we would call a materiality matrix. So really plotting these topics on two axes, right? And on the horizontal one, we're seeing impact on people and planet. On the vertical one, we're seeing financial viability. Just want to take a quick moment to explain those two axes, and really this is aligned with how the standards are looking at defining materiality, or actually double materiality, because materiality is a topic that we've known from the financial world for quite a while, which is about which issues outside of the company are relevant for the company to take into consideration, because they will influence whether or not they can be successful in the near to medium to long-term future. That's sort of single materiality, the focus of how sustainability related issues or other type issues, more to technological development and all sorts of topics, are influencing the company. What double materiality asks, and CSRD and GRI are both very clear on this as well, is also the inside out perspective. So really, how does the company impact people and planet on these topics? And those are the two axes that we don't want you to consider. So you've had the previous exercise to lead into this a little bit, discuss how relevant they might be, and here you kind of want to put them on the scale of low to high with respect to each of those axes. I think with that, I'm giving the word back to you, Pamela.
Yes, and of course, great that we now have set our material topics, because then we can move on to actually, putting some body to the bones. So we are going to set some goals regarding those material topics, and how to bridge basically those material topics towards setting those SMART goals. We would advise to first think of a high-level objective with regards to, for example, GHG emissions. A high-level objective can be something like to reduce. We have the goal to reduce GHG emissions, maybe in a specific field. It's possible. Maybe scope 2 or scope 1 emissions you would like to reduce. That's still definitely possible to mention as a high-level objective here. And as you said, those high-level objectives per pillar, it really bridges makes a bridge towards setting those SMART goals. Had to really make it more detailed as to how to make those goals more measurable. And I see Thomas is playing with the board here. Is that because you're because you want to set some smart goals here now?
Yeah, I'm just doing the exercise here, Pamela. What do you think? How am I doing?
So let's see, what is this? I see labor and human rights. We strive towards gender parity in management. We also have a slide here. Per pillar, we have actually made the same kind of slides. So you can test basically those goals that you drafted against the SMART framework. So you can ask yourself, what do you want to accomplish per goal? How will you know when you have accomplished your goal? Is it really measurable, therefore? Attainable, how can the goal be accomplished? Relevant, will the goal meet your short and long-term needs? And time-bound, when will the goal be accomplished? So if I'm looking at this goal that you just set, we strive towards gender parity in management, then I mean, what do you think yourself, Thomas? Is it very time bound?
Well, I mean, as soon as
Tomorrow?
possible, right? Just I think it's always a natural process of hiring and people leaving. So yeah, I'm wondering really to which degree we can influence this process, Pamela.
So would you want to achieve this goal tomorrow, or would you want to achieve this goal next year, or when do you want to have achieved this goal exactly? Is this something you can find back in this goal?
Yeah, now that you say it, indeed, maybe we need to attach a timeline to it, right?
Exactly. And then also when we talk about management, in what management level would you like to have this gender parity, and what does gender parity actually entail for you?
Well, parity is I suppose 50-50, or perhaps in fact more women than men. I think there's a 51-49 balance if you look at it globally. But obviously there's also I think with parity comes equity, comes a little bit of the Jedi that you referred to before already. Yeah, that and I think what's important also, if I mention management, now that you say it, we do have a lot of different levels of management, but what I'm really referring to is leadership positions in the company, I suppose. So let's say a 50% women versus men balance in those leadership positions by yeah, and then I think that leads a little bit into what we might talk later about, but it all depends a little bit on how much it is currently as well, right?
Exactly. You need to have the data right now to be able to say when you are able to achieve that. If you have a 16% today, it's very unlikely that you will reach that goal in 2024, for example. So really looking into what is the current status. Are there positions that are opening up for people to indeed potentially for women if that rate is low? The same can be, of course, for the other way around. And if we look into ethics, you had a goal as well, right?
Yes, so there we were saying, hey, improve our IT security before the end of the year.
Yes, so here as well, I think this is of course great that you want to improve your IT security, and there is a time limits set there. But when do you know that this is actually achieved? Like, what indicator shows you that your IT security is improved? Is that by having had a password policy in place, for example? Is that when you've reached a ISO standard certificate, for example? When do you think you can say, okay, we have reached our goal?
Yeah, this has been a little bit indeed the point of discussion, and I think we have been improving, but we had the same goal also last year, and so yeah, since then we have definitely improved. So, but can it ever really be completed in that sense?
I would like to really challenge you to set those more ambitious goals, to really have also clearer focus for yourself and the team on what do you want to achieve really? What is it that we want to also show to our stakeholders to be able to say, hey, we ensure that we have an ISO 27001 certification by whenever that seems realistically feasible for you to achieve. This makes it very tangible, very measurable, and very focused. So make sure that that's clear within your goals as well. When we go to sustainable procurement, the goal is already there to develop and roll out a supplier code of conduct ASAP. Yeah, that's really great. Of course, so I can only encourage you to develop and adopt a supplier code of conduct. What is the effects of such a supplier code of conduct for your company?
Well, I mean, I think what we're hoping to do with the supplier code of conduct is really bring across where we stand on some of the social and environmental topics, and basically ask our suppliers to also subscribe to that, right? To put their signature below it.
Yeah, so maybe that's actually the higher goal that you want to achieve with developing and rolling out the supplier code of conduct. A little bit more specific, you want a certain amount of suppliers perhaps to sign off on the supplier code of conduct. And of course, again, indeed, make sure that it is time bound so that you know when you can review those KPIs for which you've collected the data, and understand how far you are in progressing towards that goal. So there you go again, time-bound, specific, measurable, and that is really how you can facilitate the process within setting those goals. And we really encourage you to just try writing down some goals together with the stakeholders with their field of expertise. Just start with an action verb, write down what would be the vision for your department to set those kinds of goals. Make sure that the core topic is very clear. So for example, here it's really the code of conduct, of course. Set the time frame for you to achieve those results and test it then against the framework. So you use it to help you draft the goals, and you use it as a test framework as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Pamela. I'm seeing there's a question in the chat about who to ask to prioritize the objectives, management or all employees. And Severine is saying that they're thinking to maybe use a poll. And I think this on the one hand makes me think a little bit on selecting the material topics, because there obviously we want to include multiple stakeholders. If you're not ready to do an external survey, then yes, you can definitely use a poll or some type of survey also internally, because that already increases the amount of voices that you will include in that process, rather than maybe just top management. And then if we're talking really on the setting the objectives, I think what we've seen is a process where in a lot of cases the goal setting happens top down initially, and as the sort of the sustainability agenda grows and the maturity, the mindset within the company changes and people start embracing it more, then there's also more space to involve more people in that goal setting process, and have both in developing this more strategic goals as well as in really setting specific goals for specific departments, and in some cases even on a personal level, that we're really seeing those goals being integrated into the personal learning or performance goals of each employee. So yeah, just wanted to give that back as an answer to the chat.
And in relation to that, of course, it's very important to make sure that there's someone also really responsible for those goals. So we also always advise to make sure that once those goals are set, that I don't know, the department head, for example, is responsible for really overseeing the progress on those goals. Of course, certain tasks can be delegated and action planning can be delegated to others within the team, but it's very important to make sure that the roles and responsibilities are clearly set out in your sustainability strategy. And with that being said, I think we can go to the section on measuring.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you, Pamela. So just to give maybe a little bit of a recap on this slide, right? We have the topic of energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, which is part of the environmental pillar for us. Below it, we see the high-level objective of sourcing renewable energy, which, again, it's not measurable. It's really the overall direction that you want to take with regards to the topic. Then an example of a smart quantitative goal would be to purchase an X percentage of electricity from renewable sources by 20XX, right? So you're setting a goal, as we've just explored quite extensively, that is measurable, a certain percentage in relation to a certain base year, by a certain date that you want to achieve that. And then you want to set targets to basically say, okay, we're going for, if you're starting at 0 and you want to go to 100%, then you break it down year on year, what type of percentage you can increase. From that goal, you then had the next step is indeed creating that baseline. So how are we going to do that? What is the KPI that informs whether or not we're making progress towards achieving our goal? What is the metric or metrics that we need to measure in order to calculate our KPI? And how do we need to calculate it? And that's really where, in this case, the KPI, for example, is the percentage of renewable energy purchased per location, and then in the end for the whole organization. The metrics that you're going to have to measure is all about energy consumption. And in this case, twofold. You want to know what percentage it comes from renewable sources and what is still from so-called gray energy sources or non-renewables. So if you have that information, then you can calculate the final KPI. And that's really sort of the breakdown that we want to give you here. And maybe if we take the next slide also already straight away, because that's going to show a little bit more clearly what I mean with the baseline year, really. Baseline year is your year 0, right? Against which you're going to be comparing things. So any goal that you describe with increase or decrease instead of a fixed number. So if there's a percentage increase in customer satisfaction or a percentage decrease in water consumption, all of that needs to refer to a baseline year. For, as I mentioned already, SBTi, for a lot of companies, it's mandatory to go with 2018 as the base year, but then that refers mostly to energy and greenhouse gas emissions. For other topics, you could also still decide to take a different base year. If those legislations don't matter for you at the moment, then you can choose basically this year or last year as your last year to base things on. But we do recommend maybe even if you start setting those goals now, to first set the baseline, not just for 1 year back, but to really do that for a couple of years in a row, so that you can see a little bit also how is the trend developed there, how has also the company developed throughout that time, right? Because goals can be absolute in the sense that they're for overall water consumption, but you can also look at intensity targets, right? Dividing that overall water consumption, for example, by the by the amount of products that you sold, by the amount of employees that you have, and with that also, seeing how has that year on year compared with each other. So super important to just understand that breakdown from the topic to the high level objective, setting smart goals below it, and then really breaking those down into the KPIs, metrics, and calculations that you need to perform in order to calculate the KPI, and with that, the progress towards those goals.
And then indeed, once you've you set this baseline and you indeed gathered the information about the current status of things, then had those SMART goals that maybe we left some blanks in there, such as purchase XX percentage electricity from renewable sources by 2000XX, based on the baseline data that you have gathered, based on the information that you've gathered around maybe the measures that you are already undertaking towards reducing GHG emissions, towards looking for electricity from renewable sources, then it becomes interesting to start setting those ambitious yet realistic goals. So we would say, try to set the most ambitious goal. Look at the data that is available to you. Look at those measures that you're already undertaking. Already think about some actions that you might be taking towards meeting that most ambitious type of goal. Would it then be possible for you to indeed purchase 100% electricity from renewable sources by 2030? This is really the thought process that we would recommend in completing those SMART goals. So make sure that your goals are achievable enough to make progress and celebrate that success, inspiring enough to be challenging, encourage innovation and collaboration to achieve the goals. That is really the balance that you want to make with having data-based goals, inspiring and challenging. Then when we look at setting year-on-year targets, once you've set those medium to longer term goals, setting those year-on-year targets really makes your action planning more actionable and more also more focused. So these are really the stepping stones towards meeting that higher goal that you've set previously. And it really acts as deadlines for achieving parts of the goals. Having these deadlines really makes bigger goals more digestible, and it seems also less distant for you. Again, keeping the SMART goal that you've set inspiring, but also reassuring the team that you will be able to get there. And also based on the KPIs that you measure and report on, you can review those targets, whether these can be tweaks to ensure that that you meet the end goal.
Yeah, and then in conclusion, just a little overview of how that can look, right? So after setting the goals and establishing that baseline, you want to continue tracking, monitoring really your results on a year-to-year basis, or even more frequently if that suits your reporting, right? We know companies that report, especially internally, every quarter or even more frequently. We work, for example, also one of our partners is Position Green, which is really a platform to manage your data collection on the KPI front, especially for larger organizations where there's a lot of different locations that you need to source that information from. Those kinds of tools can really facilitate the data collection process, and in some cases can also link into it's, let's say, almost real-time dashboards that show energy consumption across different factories. So really having insight into that and being able to allow that to influence your decision making, assess whether or not you're on the right progress towards achieving those goals, making appropriate interventions if you're noticing that you're not. That's really where the information gathering becomes very important, not just to communicate outward and to comply with legislation, but also really to allow that to influence where investment goes with regards to your sustainability agenda. With that, we've come to the end of the Miro template, and just as a reminder that you can find this in the Miroverse, an updated version shortly after the webinar should be downloadable. And then with that, start playing for yourself. You can make as many copies as you want. You can sit down with your colleagues to have a look at it, and obviously, if you need any support, then we're always there. So we wanted to do one more poll before still answering a couple of questions. I'm going to launch it now. We're really curious at really what type of support you may be looking at with regards to the whole goal setting process or this building your sustainability management system. So please select any of the options if you would be interested in also being contacted by our customer success team on any of those topics to further explore how we might be able to support you in that respect. A particular one that I want to point out, obviously, is the goal setting workshop. So far, actually, I'm seeing not too many people are linking to that one. Really, what we've guided you through today is, in a facilitated form, can allow you to really think through those material topics, the goal setting process, and how to make that applicable, obviously, for your company. As you download the template, as you start playing around with it for yourself, think about it also. How do you get your colleagues engaged and on the same page, and guiding them through such a process? So that's super valuable in our experience. A couple of the other topics that are on the list is materiality assessment. So really a much more in-depth and thorough investigation of which topics are the most material for your company. As I mentioned, that's mandatory now with CSRD legislation coming up, and also for GRI aligned reporting. That's really one of the building blocks, I would say. If you have goals already and you're looking more into, okay, how do I then develop the KPIs to measure progress towards those goals? We can, of course, support in that, as well as in, let's say, the next steps of really planning the actions that you want to take in order to move towards those goals. And finally, how to report on progress, again, of course, in line with all the necessary standards, but also really in a way, as I mentioned, that informs your strategic decision making. So, with that, let's see if there are any questions that we can still address. Let me have a look here in the chat. Pamela, someone is asking here also, in your experience, because I mentioned before that you did a workshop just this morning. What are some of the, let's say, the surprising things that come forward when you put people in a room together to focus on this? Someone internally might make it happen to put some people together, but there's obviously challenges and also opportunities. So how do you handle such a situation in your experience? Pamela, you're muted, or at least we don't hear you.
There we go. Yeah. I think the workshop itself is such a nice environment for people to have those discussions, and it can be that from different expertise or from different experiences, different priorities are actually set for certain topics, and I think that is actually really key for what I like about facilitating such workshop, is to sort of try to ask those key questions as to, but why is then that specific topic so important to you, and how can we find synergies in making it actually reinforcing each other, those goals that you set, and what is maybe the higher goal that could meet both of these topics that you are addressing. So I think that is that's something that I really like about the goal setting workshops with our clients.
I think that is indeed also very much my experience. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a workshop, and what we also noticed, some people were, let's say, initially not really seeing the purpose of it, but talking about it with each other and sort of balancing ambition, so to say, that really brought forward that there was a lot of alignment between what those people thought important and the sustainability agenda, but sometimes the link between the two can initially seem distant, but then when we get to work to it, we find surprising alignments as well, right?
Absolutely. And I think here is also an interesting question around double materiality. After the material topics are identified, how do you rank them properly? With this, I mean, what parameters do you consider to give each topic a punctuation, and in the process take the double materiality into account? Yeah,
I can take that one, Pamela. The process that we have for double materiality really involves around I would say it has various different steps, but it all starts with a proper selection of your stakeholders. So who are you going to involve in the survey, and really an engagement process prior to actually sending out that survey, right? Because you want to warm those contacts up a little bit and make them agree to put some time and effort into helping your company determine those topics. Then what the survey really looks at is per topic, the two different perspectives that I highlighted before, the financial viability. So how are these issues affecting the potential profitability of the company? And on the other axis, how is the company on these topics affecting people and planet? Also, we look at 3 different time horizons. So we look at a short, medium, and long term for each of those perspectives. So in the end, you have actually 6 questions per topic to really get a numbered score of how people look at that, right? We use a Likert scale of 1 to 7 because that has proven to be the most effective. And with that, you get basically a whole bunch of data on where each of the survey participants ranks each of those topics with respect to the double materiality perspective. And we go through quite some analysis on that to really look at what does that really mean, right? And what if we play with different weights of the different timelines? So what if we attach more importance to the short term rather than the long term? With that, I'm seeing also here the time passing by, but with that, you come to, really the punctuation, as you call it, giving those scores and determining which topics are the most important to focus on.
And I think that we can bridge to also mentioning that you will be actually hosting one of those webinars around materiality and CSRD prep series.
Exactly.
And we also see some other webinars in the screen right now that you could likely attend. Yeah,
if you get me talking about materiality, then time is going to fly. So indeed, we have that one coming up, especially linked to CSRD, making this a mandatory requirement for larger companies. Then on Thursday, February 16th, we have navigating the ESG reporting landscape, alignment and key differences. So really looking at all the different standards that are out there, all the different things that you need to comply with, and making some sense of that. And coming up first on February 9th, so that's next week already on Thursday, how to improve your CDP score. So that's really a topic more on the climate side, but obviously that climate disclosure is also really a hot topic and super important for companies to look into. So much invited to also be joining these, and looking forward to seeing everyone again on another webinar. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.